Thanks so much for joining us. So I'm Alejandra Garza, and I am the field director for the ACLU of Colorado, and with me is Delana. She's our field organizer for ACLU of Colorado, alias Secret Weapon, because look at her, she can go anywhere and blend in, and she's amazing. So the reason we wanted to come today is because Robert and Deborah, Sydney's in Denver, approached us about doing outreach because of some of the concerns being faced by the immigrant community here in Delta and surrounding areas. So we wanted to talk to y'all about what our rights are, the rights that all of us have, all of us, regardless of your immigration status, regardless of who you are, you know, how much money is in your bank or account. We have all have the same rights. But what police and authorities are counting on is for you not to be aware of them so that they can take advantage of the situation. Now, the ACLU of Colorado, this is something that's very important to us because we believe that the more educated you are about your rights, the better that you can defend them, or reach out to organizations like the ACLU who can advocate on your behalf. So the ACLU is one of the oldest civil rights organizations in our country. And we were founded to challenge a lot of practices which should not have been allowed because of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. However, what we have found and what we believe as an organization is that your rights are only good if people are willing to challenge and to fight for them. So the ACLU has done that, and we have challenged and gone before the Supreme Court more than any other organization after the US government. And we've won a lot of big cases. You may have heard of some of our cases. Brown v. Board of Education, that was an ACLU case. The Skoke-Smokey trial, where, the monkey trial, where there was a school district that, you know, was not permitting the teaching of evolution. That was an ACLU case. More recently, we had the Obergefell decision, which legalized marriage equality. And most recently, we had the Muslim Ban 2.0, which we fought the Trump administration on in Virginia, that circuit court, and we won. So that's the heart of where we started, was as a law firm, as a nonprofit law firm, to challenge the government on behalf of everyone in this country's civil rights, civil liberties. So at the beginning of our organization, we started off as a law firm. Since then, we've grown into other areas of advocacy. Here in Colorado, the ACLU is located in Denver, and yes, we have a law firm. Here in Colorado, we've been part of some of the biggest cases recently that have been in the news. Anybody hear about the cake case? Anybody? Okay, in Denver, it's kind of a big deal. The cake thing, yes, there was in Lakewood, Colorado, there was a lovely gay couple who wanted a wedding cake. They were gay. And they had gone to this bakery for years. They had had a relationship with this bakery for years as customers. They were getting married. And these two gentlemen decided, we want you to do our cake. And the owner said to them, I don't do gay weddings. I do dog weddings, but I don't do gay weddings. It's against my religion. ACLU sued because when your doors in Colorado, thanks to our public accommodations law, when your doors are open to everyone, your doors are open to everyone. Otherwise, we're concerned not only about the implications for a simple bakery, but a pharmacist, a doctor, other professions that could impact people's lives. We feel that there should be no religious exception under our public accommodations law. We have also, right now, we're suing ICE. We're suing the state of Colorado for the way they treat poor victims who need hepatitis C medicine. We are suing Douglas County School District. We're suing the city of Aurora. Colorado Springs, did we sue them, or that was just a letter? That was just a letter, Ryan Brown. We threatened to sue the city of Colorado Springs for racial profiling, and we won. So we do this a lot, and we win a lot, thankfully. So that's one of the things that we do here locally. We also have a public policy department. Every day that the state legislature is meeting, we are up there and we are advocating for laws that we work with legislators on crafting to expand our civil liberties, and we're fighting the really bad laws. So an example, and some of these are going to be really, they don't sound very sexy, but they are. We just had a bill signed into law today, which we're really excited about, which is going to monitor the use of civil asset forfeiture. Civil asset forfeiture is when a police officer suspects that maybe you committed a crime, maybe you're a drug dealer, maybe you received stolen property. We're not sure, but we're going to seize your property anyway. Even though you have not been charged with a crime, you haven't been convicted with a crime, but just under mere suspicion of a crime. What we saw in many cases was that police were abusing this practice and using it as a moneymaker for their departments. Again, people did not have to be charged with a crime or convicted of a crime, and they were seizing people's property. Even if you were not charged, even if you were not convicted, you were not guilty of anything, right? You tried to get your property back, you had to go through a lengthy legal process to get your property back. We were really worried about this, and so we had the governor sign a law that he signed into law, a bill that he signed into law today, which is now going to require police departments to report what was seized, to tell us, to make the information public, and also to let us know, by the way, was that person found guilty of a crime, or were they found, were no charges filed? So that we can start detecting patterns of abuse. This is something that the police departments fought. They did not want this bill. They did not want to be told how or when they could seize people's property, but it is now law. The other bill that we're really proud of, 72-hour, has it been signed yet?
I'm almost there.
Okay. Was a bill which we're finding out if it's been signed yet into law, where y'all know this because y'all live in some smaller towns. There are some smaller towns in Colorado where the court system, the courts only meet twice a month, once a week, once a month. So if you get pulled over in some of these towns for things like driving without a license, open container, minor things, which could end up with you in jail, you would have to wait 2 weeks, a month, to get before a judge just to get a bail bond hearing so that you could get out. And again, these are minor crimes. So in many cases, you would be eligible for a PR bond or a low-level, low-dollar bond. Great, except for court only meets once a month in this town, so you're going to have to wait. We had people who were being held for days and weeks at a time, not because they did anything wrong, but because the courts didn't meet. So what would you do? A lot of people were pleading guilty just to get out of jail, just to go home, to see their children, to go to work. ACLU thought this is unreasonable. And so we passed a bill this year which made it through the legislature. It said 72 hours. You have 72 hours from the time that you put someone in jail to their first bond hearing. And the little towns try to protest, well, we can't, no, figure it out. Because that is unacceptable. So those are some of the things that we're working on, that we worked on at the state capitol. Those are some of the things that keep us up at night. Again, not the sexiest of issues, right? But if you are poor, if you are a targeted community, if you are a community of color, these are issues that affect your life every day. That's what we work on. Then the third thing that we do at our office here in Denver is we work on communications and outreach. We can win the most court cases. We can pass the most beautiful laws. But if nobody knows about them, then it's not of any good. Because remember, law enforcement and authorities are counting on you not knowing your rights so that they can take advantage of these situations. What we started doing a few years ago is after we saw this unfortunate tragedy after tragedy after tragedy of young men and women of color being gunned down or killed because of an interaction with police, we started doing Know Your Rights trainings. Just so we could reach out to our communities and let them know what their rights and responsibilities are in any interaction with any law enforcement official. Now, I have to give y'all a caveat because we're the ACLU. We're the free speech people, y'all. But there is something very important about these Know Your Rights trainings. I wish we lived in a climate right now where you could give a police officer a piece of your mind. I wish you could tell a police officer that this is crap, you should be, you're doing shoddy work, why don't you go catch the real criminals? I wish we could say that. We can't, unfortunately. Because the time to voice your displeasure, the time to complain about a police officer is never when one is in front of you. In that situation, the police officer controls the outcome of the interaction. So even though free speech all the way, I almost feel like a hypocrite for saying, except in a police encounter. Why? Because we have seen too many times when it can turn badly. And my goal, our goal, for all of our young men and women and every person in this room and your loved ones is for you to go home at the end of an incident and not to jail or to the morgue. Okay? So, this is our Know Your Rights. How many of you have been stopped by a police officer and you think it was kind of BS? It was a BS. It was you don't know. Was my tail light really out? Did he really have to stop me because my sticker was kind of loose? What I'm trying to say is, a lot of times when you get pulled over by a police officer, your reaction is not going to be pleasant. You're going to be annoyed. You're going to be scared. You're going to be running late for something. You're going to have your kid crying in the back seat. It's not going to be the most pleasant situation. Now, let's look at it from the police officer situation. Yes, there are some police officers who are not doing a great job. The majority, I want to believe, are good people. But even for them, an interaction for them is also very tense, because we have seen officers who have been hurt in an interaction. So when they're walking up to your car, they don't know if they're walking into an ambush situation. They don't know if you have a gun. They don't know if you're on drugs. They don't know what they're walking into either. So we have tension on both sides, right? So that makes for a really delicate situation. So what we say is, in any interaction with the police, when the police officer approaches you, again, First Amendment, I know it's going to kill me, but we ask people to be polite. Short phrases, very succinct phrases, good evening, officer. You don't have to be pleasant, but you do have to be calm, and you do have to follow orders, okay? Many times, situations with police officers, they determine they don't like someone's attitude, and things can spiral from there. So, stay calm, don't argue, don't try to defend yourself, don't offer more information. It's very common, especially for as a woman, I've encountered this. A police officer will walk up to my window and say, "Do you know why I stopped you?" And I say, "Oh, officer, I was going 35 and a 25. Don't do that. I just admitted to a crime. Why am I doing his job for him?" So don't volunteer any information. If he asks you, "Why did I stop you?" you say, "Officer, I don't know." Do not admit to something if you don't have to, which you don't have to. Keep your hands where the officer can see them. Keep your hands where your officer can see them, when the officer can see them. If it's in the evening, we recommend that maybe if you want, if it's really dark, you turn the light on, again, for your safety and for the officers. You will have to present your driver's license, insurance, and registration if you have it. And what we recommend is for you to tell the officer what you're doing. Again, we don't want any sudden movements. We don't want any jerking around. We want to say, "Officer, I'm reaching in the glove compartment for my insurance. Officer, I'm reaching in my wallet for my license." Again, calm. If the officer, for some reason, tells you to get out of your car, you have to follow an order. You get out of the car, you close the door behind you. Anybody know why? It has been upheld in the courts that if you leave the door open, that can be interpreted as an invitation for the police to search your car. Come on in. Close the door behind you. Okay? You will have to obey an order. If they tell you, put your hands up, again, calmly follow an order. Do not argue. Do not say, man, this is crap, this is bull. No. Calm. It stinks, but again, the time to challenge a police officer's actions is not in the street when he is in front of you. If you're concerned about your civil rights being violated, make mental notes and file a complaint afterwards. Make a note of what the location is, what time it is. Does the officer have a badge? Were there cars? Are there witnesses? Make all of these mental notes so that later, if you sincerely feel that your rights were being violated, you can file a complaint. But not in front of the guy. Not right there, I'm going to have your job, you're going to be at, no, it will end badly. Real quick also, a lot of times you will find the police officer will try to intimidate you by getting really close to you. And it's not always pleasant. He may have just had an onion bagel. He may be spitting on you. You may be getting a shower. What a lot of young people do is, hey man, back off. Try to get a little bit of space. Try to push back. Don't. Never touch a cop. Ever. Not with your pinky, nothing. That is assault. That is assaulting a police officer. And things will turn even worse that way. If the officer is, in your face, take a step back, but do not touch him. Not even by accident. So if you're stopped in your car, I said that you have to show your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. What if you don't have any of that? Do you admit to it? No. You say, officer, I'm going to exercise my right to remain silent. Let him determine that you don't have that. Does that make sense? Do not admit to a crime. Officer, give me your license and registration. Officer, I'm going to exercise my right to remain silent. Do not do their job for them. Okay? If you have it, then you have to show it. Okay? What we find many times is people will try to explain their way, people will try to talk a police officer out of it. It usually doesn't work. Don't waste your time and don't risk a bad situation. So those are just some tips if you're stopped in your car. Now, up until now, this is all know your rights for any interaction with police, right? Where it gets a little bit complicated is when we have an immigration issue. So we're going to come back to that. One other situation that we find happens a lot, especially with young people, is they're coming out of the 7-Eleven or the, loafing jug out here. And many times a police officer will stop and say, hey, where are you coming from? Oh yeah, hey, where are you going? Is there a party? Yeah? Are there going to be minors there? A casual conversation with a police officer can very quickly go south if you start volunteering information, especially with young people. That's what we find. A friendly conversation can quickly become a situation where you have no idea, and next thing you know, he wants to go through your backpack because you mentioned that you're going somewhere and there's a party and he thinks that you're a minor in possession. It can spiral. So what we ask people to do is, if you're in any conversation with a police officer, you identify what the situation is. The police officer will be talking to you casually, but in the back of his mind, he's searching. He's searching. Again, many good police officers. Many of them may be friendly, but at the end of the day, they are a police officer. So you need to identify as quickly as possible what situation you find yourself in with a law enforcement officer. A police officer starts talking to you, starts chatting you up. So what are y'all doing tonight? Where are you going? Are there any parties? Is this your car? That's a nice car. How do you afford that car? Do you have a job? Is that really your car? You ask an officer, "Officer, good evening. Am I being detained or am I free to go?" If the officer does not have a legitimate reason to detain you or a legitimate reason to suspect that you are involved in something, he will be, or she, will be forced to tell you you're free to go. If the officer tells you that you're being detained, it means that he suspects that you may be involved in something suspicious, and what you need to do is shut up and stop talking. Okay? Many good officers, they're not out there to be our best friends. If in your car or out and about, an officer asks you, when he has you pulled over, when he asks you to step out of your car, "Mind if I look in your car?" You do not have to. You, however, must tell the officer, "Officer, I do not consent to a search." Can y'all repeat that after me? "Officer, I do not consent to a search." The reason I'm telling you is because you have to say it. And you have to say it with those words that tell him that you know what your rights are. Same thing if you're walking out of the 7-Eleven and you have a backpack. The officer's going to say, "Mind if I look in your backpack?" You have to say, "Officer, I do not consent to a search." You know what we see a lot? We see a lot of teenagers going, "I don't care. You're going to do it anyway. Whatever." And then the officer proceeds to look through their things. There are some people, my parents are from Mexico. I was taught, "El que nada debe, nada teme," which basically means if you don't have anything to hide, then you shouldn't be scared. Sure, except for number one, you cannot account for your property where it is at all times, and you do not know if your kid borrowed the car and maybe the friend dropped a joint in there and you don't know about it, if your husband went hunting and left his gun in the car, which is a possible scenario out here. You don't know. You don't know. Unless you can account for where your property was at every moment, don't risk it. You could be risking your freedom. Your backpack. If they ask you to go through your backpack, again, same thing, you don't know. Maybe you have a pair of scissors in there. Maybe you have something that can be, misconstrued as a weapon. You don't know. You don't know what they're looking for or why. And if you feel like don't feel anything. Feel like they should not go through your property. Also, number two reason, it's your stuff. They don't care if it breaks. Do you think they're going to be sweet with it? Do you think they're going to take out, the picture of your girlfriend and put it carefully? No, they're going to rifle through it and they're going to leave a mess and you're going to have to pick it up. They're not going to respect your property. So don't let them go through your property. They're going to lie to you. They're going to tell you, "I need a dog and a search warrant out here in 5 minutes. I heard that you were just there and they put something in your car and I want to see it." No, I do not consent to a search. The police can, and in many cases will, lie to you. They can. It has been upheld by the courts. Do not fall for it. There are only a handful of ways that they can go through your belongings. Number one is a search warrant, which must be signed by a judge and takes a little bit of time to obtain, and they have to state a justification for it. And then there are other exceptions, which are the extreme danger situation. For example, if your car is on fire and there's somebody in the back seat, they're not going to ask for your permission. They're going to open the back seat. If you are pulled over on the side of the road, they walk up to your car and they hear somebody banging in the trunk screaming, "Help me." That would come under the extreme danger. If they're at your door and they see that there are flames, they're going to rush into your door. Okay, so that's one. Another one is the plain sight. If you have something in plain sight that they feel is suspicious, then they can go into your car. And then, or belongings. Then the other one is if your car for some reason is impounded, they can go in your car. You know why? Because they have to make an inventory list. So there are a handful of exceptions, but we need you to state, I do not consent to a search. Another reason why? We need it on the record so that if you end up in court, the search can be challenged. So it has to be said with those words and loud enough that the officer can hear you and that perhaps a witness can hear you. Perhaps if you're in the parking lot of the 7-Eleven, the camera at the 7-Eleven can record it. But we need it to be stated. Also, real quick, in Colorado is a state which allows the recording of police officer interactions. If you get pulled over, you can say to the officer, "Officer, I am going to record this with my phone. I'm going to record this interaction with my phone." Now, you cannot disobey an order because you're recording, and also you cannot, what is the word? You cannot obstruct any police activity because of it. If you see your cousin being arrested, you can't go up in the middle of it. No, you have to respect a distance if you're recording another event or if you are recording your interaction with the police. So just don't get in his face and, out of the way. No. Respectable distance, but you do have that right. And we at the ACLU took a case recently where a young man in Colorado Springs, African-American young man, great guy, recorded an interaction with the police. He was pulled out of his car for no justification, face planted in the snow by police officers. The whole time he was recording. His phone was recording. He sent us the video. We represented him, and the city of Colorado Springs just paid him $200,000.
What's the reason why you pulled us over, officer? I'm recording this. Police officers pulled us over for no reason. I got this on camera.
Do you have your ID?
I have my camera. I have my ID, and I'm recording this, just to let you know.
I'd like you to pass me your ID, please, and keep your hands where I can see.
Am I under arrest? You failed to identify yourself, so I don't know who you are.
Well, sir, you know I'm a police officer with the city of Colorado Springs.
You failed to identify yourself.
He would not cooperate. I just need your ID now.
You failed to identify yourself. My hands are visible. I have the recorder recording. My brother is being put in handcuffs. We're pulled over for no reason. He still had not identified why he's pulled us over. Now I'm being perceived as a threat because we're being pulled over for absolutely no reason. Am I being placed under arrest?
You're not under arrest.
What's the? I'm asking for the reason why we're being pulled over. You have still failed to identify why you have pulled us over.
I'm not pulling you. You're the passenger. Come on up.
Why are you pulling me out of my car, sir? Take your hands off of me.
No,
I have not did nothing. I have not did nothing. I have no weapons. I have no weapons. You have no reason to pull me out of the car. This is assault.
Turn around. Turn around. Turn around.
You see this? You see this? Excessive force.
The police officer who was recorded pushing his face into the snow, pushing him down. Oh, he was pulled over for a broken windshield, by the way. Did not write that in his report. When he was asked about it, he said he didn't remember, and then he was confronted with the video and said, "Oh yeah." If that young man had not recorded that interaction, whose word do you think they would have believed? You have the right to record in Colorado. Okay. If the police come to your door, You do not have to let them in unless they have a warrant signed by a judge. You have to see the warrant. It's not good enough for them to, sometimes they'll have like papers rolled up. This could be a memo. You have to ask to see the warrant. It has to be signed by a judge. Okay? If you're arrested by police, do not resist, do not run. We have seen people get shot in the back. Okay? We had a client recently. He did nothing wrong. I'm going to begin by saying this.
Sir, with the white shirt, sit down, please.
Sit down. Sit down.
I also cannot sit.
You can sit down.
Sit down, please.
All right, do me a favor, turn around. Both of you face that direction right now.
For what?
Turn around.
For what?
Face that direction.
For
Put
what?
hands on your head.
For what? No, I know my rights. For what?
I'm asking you to do
For
that.
what? What are we
We
will
being
get to that in a
detained
minute.
for? Answer my question, officer.
No, we're not
I know my
talking.
rights.
Stay there. Cuff him. Hold on, I got it. 5, give us the air for a second. We have one tased. I'll take him into custody. Just stay right where you are.
Keep an eye on them, please. I don't know if it's police.
Okay, slow down. Do it right. There you go.
I want to talk to his boss.
Well, the chief isn't
I
here.
didn't do anything, and there are witnesses. Yes.
Hey, look right here. It's all on video, sweetheart.
He posed no threat. Please obey orders and stay calm. Stay quiet, remain quiet, and ask for an attorney. If and when you do get to the jail, don't sign anything. Don't sign anything until your lawyer is there. Don't talk to anyone until your lawyer is there. You have a right to make a phone call. That doesn't mean they have the right to listen in on your phone call. You have a right to make a phone call with relative privacy. Oh, but guess what? You can't have your phones when you're in jail. So you better start memorizing a couple of phone numbers. Okay, it's always a good, I have become worthless at this. I have to look at numbers and I can't memorize them 5 minutes after I wrote them down. Work on memorizing a couple of numbers, okay? All of this is true for everyone. For everyone. Does anyone have any quick questions? Because we're about to get into the immigration part.
When it came to the search thing, at what point does probable cause, does that enter into the search aspect?
You can still, unless it's one of the exceptions that I was talking about, where they can see something, they can smell something, there's an immediate danger, we still want you to say clearly, I do not consent to a search, because they're saying they have probable cause. Again, they can lie to you. So I don't care if they're in the middle of it, you still maintain, I do not consent to a search. If you repeat that, if that is, and what we have in Denver, fortunately, and some of the communities, is police officers have body cameras there. So if we're saying, I don't consent to a search the whole time, guess what? It's on the body camera. But if you maintain that position, it's a lot easier for your lawyer to defend that position. So, and they would have to prove what they're alleging, probable cause. They would have to justify the search. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I see what you're saying there. Well, just the reason why I thought was because it seems like probable cause is really broad, like they can come up with anything. And I guess you don't agree to it, then you deal with that later.
You deal with that later, but also you do not consent to a search. If you stress that, I do not consent to a search, then they're going to know that you're probably down the road likely to challenge it. Does that make sense? If you sat there and said, okay, whatever, they know you probably don't know that you have a Fourth Amendment right to protect you against unreasonable search and seizure, and they know you're probably not well informed enough to challenge it. And you probably don't care. But we want you to state that. So, yeah. Immigration. All of this is true again for immigration. You have a right to ask if you are free to go. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to not consent to unreasonable search and seizure. But it gets a little harder. Because this administration, what I was just talking about was criminal, municipal, civil, traffic, whatever. What we're talking about now is federal. And this government has told us that the mere act of being in this country without proper documentation is justification for deportation. So there's not a lot of good news that we can give except for the best way for people to confront the situation is to prepare. I wish there was something I could tell you and give our communities hope, but the best we can do as allies and as communities that are affected and being hunted, because let us not make a mistake, our Latino, our Mexican American, our Mexican immigrant brothers and sisters are being hunted. They are being targeted. And if you don't believe me, there was a Mexican immigrant in Denver today who was shot in the head by an ICE agent because he was fleeing an interaction. So what we tell people is, if you are detained and if you're asked about your immigration status, do not say anything. Fifth Amendment right. You do have to tell your name, but you don't have to answer if you're a U.S. citizen. You don't have to answer how you got here. You don't have to answer where you're from. One quick note, if you have documentation, if you have a work visa or a travel visa, if you have a green card, if you have a passport, if you're a citizen, you must show that documentation. In fact, you have to, if you are a visa or a green card holder, you have to carry that with you. And it's probably a good idea to carry it now. However, being a visa holder, having a green card, which is a green card or a visa holder, does not guarantee that you will not be deported. Visas can be revoked. Green cards can also be revoked. There are an awful lot of American veterans in Tijuana right now who are deported for crimes. American veterans who are green card holders. Do not lie about your immigration status. If you have a brother and you look just like him and he's a citizen because he married a gringa and he has papers and you don't say you're your brother. That's a felony. Do not say anything. If you are in your home and immigration agents come to your house, same thing applies. They need a warrant. Has to be signed by a judge. What these hijos de su pinche madre will try to do is try to pass off a memo as a warrant, taking advantage of the fact that people might be scared or confused. Has to be a warrant, has to be signed by a judge, has to name the person that they're looking for. Again, do not let them in your house. Come outside to talk to them if you're the person that's named in the warrant. Do not open the door. If they have a warrant, how do they show you? Well, they can show you through the window. They can show you under the door, but do not let them in. One other lovely little thing. Police officers, ICE, when they come to your door, they're not going to be like, hola, señor Mendoza. No, they're going to knock the door down. They're going to have the uniform. They're going to have the car. They're going to have the goggles. It's going to be intimidating. That's what they want. And we have to be brave. We have to think of our children, think of our families, think of the life that we've built here, and be brave. And do not lose that in a moment of fear. Ask for a warrant. Do not open the door until you see it. If you are the person named in the warrant, the person named in the warrant is the only person that they're searching for. If they come inside the house, if they force their way inside the house, everyone must be silent, including the children. Talk to your children. Prepare them for this scenario, as unlikely as it may seem, hopefully. Because I don't know about y'all, but my 9-year-old daughter would turn me in an instant because she'd be like, Mommy, but Grandma's in the basement and she doesn't have papers, and tell the officer, because drunks and children don't lie. Talk to your children. Tell them in a situation like this that they must remain quiet. Again, it's going to be scary. They're going to be yelling at you. They're going to have weapons. There's going to be a lot of them in many cases. Be brave. Do not say anything. If and when you are taken to a detention center, easiest way for them to get rid of you is for you to sign your freedom away. Don't sign anything, much less if it's in English. I don't care if it's in Spanish. I speak Spanish fluently. Do y'all think I can decipher a legal document if it's in front of me? No. Do not sign anything, and ask for a lawyer. Ask for a bond hearing. Ask for a lawyer, ask for a bond hearing. Say that to everyone that you encounter. Ask for a lawyer, ask for a bond hearing. And do not sign anything. You also have a right to make a phone call. So again, think of what phone numbers. Worst case scenario, who would you call? Would your first call be to a family member or to an attorney? Depends on what time it is. If it's, make a plan. If it's 4 o'clock and I call the house, I know my husband's going to be at work. So who would I call in that scenario? Make a plan. Have these things in mind. Ask for, what are the 2 things I'm telling y'all to ask for? Ask for a lawyer and ask for a bond hearing. If you are poor and cannot afford a lawyer, are they going to provide one for you? No. Not in immigration court. Not for immigration detentions. No. Why are you asking for a lawyer anyway? Because you have a right to one. You also have a right to request a bond hearing. But again, they're counting on people not knowing this. They're not going to volunteer this information to you. They're not going to say, Mijito, it's okay. Here's a list of lawyers, and you can get a bond hearing. Don't worry, you'll be home to your family tomorrow. No. Yes?
Does the new law about 72 hours between arrest and bond hearings also apply for immigration detention?
No. It only applies for state, county, municipal.
And it was signed.
And it was signed. It's law now, y'all. Please take that out of the video. But we passed a law last year, which I love this law that we passed last year. I'll tell y'all, we're a bunch of badasses, y'all, and you can leave that in. Last year we passed a law, real quick detour. Last year we passed a law in Colorado. So the thing I just said about if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you, right? That was the case in federal court. That was the case in state court. That was not the case in municipal court. That was not the case in municipal court. You had people being detained by the city of Aurora for like open container, sleeping in your car, letting your dog off leash. They would go to municipal court They would have on the table as one of the punishments jail time. And they didn't have an attorney, they couldn't afford an attorney, they weren't providing one, so these people were pleading guilty and getting these little crappy infractions on their record and going to jail for them. ACLU said, absolutely not. If jail time is on the table, you need a lawyer. That law also benefits immigrants, because if it is a very minor infraction as an immigrant, if you have an attorney, you can be advised how it will affect your immigration status. And if it is something that is total BS, you can fight it. And this way not risk ICE detection. So that is a law. At the municipal level, you have the right to a public defender if you cannot afford one. Okay, let's go back to the detention center. Do not sign anything. Do not sign anything. A lot of times what these guys will say is, I know you're scared. Here, sign this and you can go home. Yeah, home to Mexico, because this is your self-deportation order that you just signed. Or what they're doing now is, this is a cancellation of your visa. Do not sign anything. Oh, by the way, y'all, they are now asking, I would be so sunk. They are now asking for visa applicants. Have y'all heard about this? No? They are now asking for visa applicants on their applications for legal visas to list all of their social media accounts and all of their handles for the last 5 years. They want to see pictures of your grandma. What can I say? Ask for a lawyer, ask for a bond hearing, do not sign anything. Memorize phone numbers. Actually, that's just a good idea for everybody, I think. Memorize phone numbers, okay, y'all? iPhones die, they get lost. Memorize phone number. Do not discuss your immigration status with anyone but your lawyer. Do not admit to anything. You will be given an immigration number. It's called an A number. Give it to your family when you speak to them. We have seen cases. I had a case the other day that somebody emailed me, and she told me, my housekeeper, I haven't seen him in days. I'm worried about him. He's from Uganda. Did I show you that email? It's amazing. He's a good man. I'm worried about him. And I said, okay, you're his employer, so you should know some information about him. Look for him on the ICE website. The ICE website has what they call, it's a locator. It's in one of your handouts. If you are worried about somebody, if you haven't seen Pablo in 5 days and you're worried about him, go to the ICE website, go to the locator. The website address is right up here. You turn to the back. This is the information you will use to find a person in the ICE system. Their name, their last name, their country of birth, and their birthday. The person that emailed me found her housekeeper this way. Now, watch out, guys, because, well, I know her name is Debbie Fisk, but but Debbie Fisk isn't going to show up. It's going to be Deborah Fisk. And Debbie's my good friend, but when's her birthday? You have to know this information about people. Their first name, last name. And let's be careful. Remember, y'all, Mexicans have a bunch of names. There's a big difference between Juan Mendoza and Juan Pablo Mendoza Cárdenas. So you have to know their full name, their date of birth, and the country where they were born. And this will tell you if they are in the ICE detention system.
Are you aware of any risk that if you look up somebody's information that they're not currently in the ICE system, that they could be targeted because somebody was looking up their information?
I'm not aware of any risk, to be honest with you, and that would be unconscionable. But again, no, I'm not aware of any risk. I hope and pray that they wouldn't do that. But again, there are so many people that they're targeting that I would hope that they wouldn't detect one because it was in the form. Does that make sense?
What was the question?
If looking for someone puts them at risk for identification, I would hope not, because you're not saying that, you're not saying that they committed a crime. I could look for Delana tomorrow and hopefully they won't scoop her up. Hopefully. So to be honest with you, I'm not aware that puts them at risk. I think they're busy enough as it is, I hope. But that would be unconscionable. If this is another sheet that I gave y'all, this is important. There's a big hole missing here. That word is supposed to be volunteer. Okay? For some reason it didn't come off, but volunteers. When I was talking about asking for an attorney, attorneys cost money. And we'll get to our plan in a minute. But just know that there is an organization called the Rocky Mountain Immigration Advocacy Network that we work with. In fact, the other day, actually about 3 months ago, we sent them 60 attorneys who wanted to volunteer with us, and we sent them over to Remain to do bond detention hearings. These were like real estate attorneys and divorce attorneys and tax attorneys, and they may not be able to do an entire immigration case, but they can do a bond hearing, and we train them how to do that. Why do we ask you to ask for a bond hearing? So you can get out. So you can get out and go home to your children. So you can get out and find a lawyer and prepare a case for your defense. So that we can slow down the system, y'all. Because if we get people asking for bond hearings, we hopefully can get so many people that ask for them and that get them, we can slow down the process, slow down the system, and also because it's your right. If you or your loved one find yourself in this situation and you cannot afford an attorney, this is one organization that is providing attorneys for bond hearings. There's a hotline down here at the bottom where you will call and give them your information, the name and the A number of your loved one, and they will work to locate your loved one and get them into their services. Okay? And to get information about the detention and removal proceedings. We just sent them 60 attorneys the other day. A bond hearing is your right to ask for it. Does not mean that you will necessarily get it, but we can improve our chances of getting it. How? Well, a bond hearing tells the judge that you can be released. You can be trusted to be released, and that you're going to come back for your trial. That's what a bond hearing tells a judge. Okay, I'm going to give you a bond so you can get out, but you have to come back in 2 months for your trial date. Okay. So how do we tell the judge that you deserve a bond? We have to show the judge that you are a good person, that you have ties to the community, that you are not a narco trafficker, that you are not a bad person, that you will come back. You will fulfill your obligation, your commitment. How do we prove that? I want all of you, pretend y'all are immigrants, okay? I want all of you, and actually it's a good idea for anyone actually. I want all of you to go home and in a safe place in your home, put all documents that can help prove this. That you're a good person, that you have ties to the community, that you're responsible, and that you're not an evil person. What am I talking about? I want your birth certificates in there. I want your children's birth certificates in there. I want your children's report cards in there. I want tax records in there if you pay taxes. I want pay stubs. I want your light bill. I want your lease. If your child got a blue ribbon and a spelling bee, I want that in there. If you volunteer at the church and got an award for that, I want that. I want you to show that you're a good person so that you can go home to your families, okay? Anything that you feel can tell a judge the story of your life Put it in there and take it to the bond hearing. Marriage certificates. Your child's 3rd grade class photo, put it in there. Tell a story. And if you put documents in there, make 50 copies. I'm exaggerating, don't make 50. Make 10 copies of your passports, of your birth certificates, of your marriage licenses, of all of that. Make copies. Do not risk giving the original to somebody and never getting it back. Okay? Keep that in a safe place in your home. We need to make a plan. If you feel that you or your family is vulnerable right now, you need to make a plan. You need to develop a network. Think about it. And too many times we don't think about this until it is too late. If you were not home at 4 o'clock because you were detained, who would take care of your children? Who would give your mother her medicine? Who would pick your child up from daycare? Think about the people that you interact with, the people at your church, the people in your community, your family members if you have them here, and make a plan with them. A lot of us are very private people. We can't be private anymore. We need to discuss with our loved ones, when possible, to plan for the worst. And that means simple things like, Delana, I'm going to the grocery store today, and then I'm going to go and pick up my daughter at school. I pick her up at 3 o'clock. That way, if I don't show up to pick up my daughter at school, Delana knows that the last place I was at the grocery store. That way, Delana knows that if I don't pick up my daughter at 3 o'clock, she's going to do it. Make a plan with your family. If I don't come home, if I'm home every day at 6 o'clock and I don't come home, you call my cell phone and you text me. If I don't answer in 5-10 minutes, the plan goes into action. You look for me in the ICE locator. You call the attorney that we have talked about before. You make sure, that my husband knows. Okay, have y'all ever seen a prairie dog colony? Have you ever seen when there's danger, one starts yipping over here and he notifies the rest? That's what we have to do. Okay? So start thinking, what would I do? If I'm not there, and it's possible that I'm detained for days, for God knows how long, how would I make sure that my family, my loved ones, my property was taken care of? So that means that we are going to have to think about these things and identify people in our lives that are trustworthy, that we trust with the most valuable things we have, our children and our property. There are powers of attorney. There are 2 of them. One of them, and I can email them to y'all because I have some that were given to me. There are 2 of them that are important. The first one is to establish who would have custody of your children. Now be careful, because if you name your first person who is also perhaps in the same immigration status as you, and then they get detained, then you might need a plan B and a plan C. Okay? Think about it. Who would you trust? Okay. So you'll put that on the form. The other form is what is called a financial responsibility form. If I leave my children with someone, then that person will also have to be responsible for feeding them, for taking them to the doctor if they have to go. I should probably give them access to my financial resources to do that. The financial responsibility form establishes that someone has permission to act in your name at your bank, in your property, paying rent, in your name, paying your light bill, in your name. Don't worry, neither one of these documents go into effect unless you are detained. So if you do it, if you sign it over to your, brother and he scams you, that's not how it's supposed to work, okay? It's only if and when you are not able to make those decisions because you're detained. Make a list of important phone numbers. And it's probably a good idea to look for an immigration lawyer. One that you can trust. One that has good references. One that got really kick-ass reviews on Yelp. Okay? Ojo. There's a little sheet here. That does not mean a notario. A notario in Latin America, especially in Mexican, is an attorney who specializes in transactional operations. A notary public in the United States is not an attorney. These people are taking advantage of what we call false friends. Try saying embarrassed in English and say you're embarazada in Spanish. Not the same thing. Same thing with notario. A notary is one thing, a notario is another. But there are some unscrupulous people who will try to take advantage of this confusion. And guess what, y'all? ACLU passed a law last year with some of our allies that makes it a crime to take advantage of this confusion. So, encourage people, let them know your contacts. A notario is not an attorney. And they are committing a crime. But we also need these crimes reported, so if you do encounter somebody, please report them. The Colorado Attorney General's office or the Supreme Court want to hear about these people. That's the only way we can catch them, okay? We have seen cases of people whose paperwork has been mishandled by somebody who says he is an attorney and is not an attorney, and people have been deported for that, okay? So, another real quick law that we helped pass last year, driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants. There are so many people that want them and there's so few appointments, right? People were selling the appointments for $1,000 because everybody wants one and there's not that many, so you have supply and demand. Oh, money, entrepreneurs. No. You cannot sell or buy appointments for government services. So that's against the law too. So if you know of anybody selling appointments for driver's licenses, please report them. Please, that's the only way we're going to get these people. If you are detained, please don't run. Please don't fight. Please don't resist. Please, for your own health, for your own well-being, for your own safety, I repeat, somebody was shot in the head today by an ICE agent as he was fleeing. So, the best thing we can do is prepare. Think of an attorney, get a recommendation from a good one, and start a little lawyer fund. Start saving a little bit of money, because yes, it is very nice that there are organizations that will offer their services for free, but they also have a lot of demand. Do you think you're the only person who wants a free lawyer? No. So just in case you can't go this route, have a little legal fund. Save a little bit of money. It's well worth it. Because the cases that we have seen in Denver where deportations have been stopped, where detention orders have been paused, are the attentions that garner a lot of attention in the media, are the cases where we have seen a lot of attention in the media, and where they have attorneys. So, prepare. And if you feel that your rights have been violated, if you have a case of abuse, if you have a case of, people whose rights have been violated, let us know, let the ACLU know. We want to hear about these things because we would love to challenge some of these. Right now we're suing ICE, I mentioned earlier, because ICE made up a policy for defense attorneys. Let's say I have a client, Robert. Robert's in jail, he's a great guy, he's set for deportation, and I want to see his file. ICE is telling these attorneys, no, you can't see Robert's file. He's a fugitive, and we can withhold his records. ACLU is suing and saying, now come on, ICE. The fugitive statute only applies in 8 situations, and one of them is national security, and the other one is a state of emergency. And there are several others that this doesn't apply to because Robert is a gardener. So we're suing ICE to challenge this crap policy. And it's going to go to court soon. So we want to hear about these cases. And be brave. Ryan was calm. Excessive force. Do you see, if he had struggled, if he had fought, if he had resisted, this could have ended a lot. It could have been a lot more dangerous. So, you know what Ryan did? You know what Darshan did? They didn't fight. They didn't resist. They didn't go toe to toe. They were calm, and then they called us. Okay? That, and we took care of it. But between the incidents and the time justice was done in both cases, a year passed. So, yeah. Anyway, okay. But I promise y'all, we're working hard every day for all of you, for all of our communities. And thank you so much for caring about our immigrant brothers and sisters. They need all the friends they can get right now.
Thank you.